All right, fellow coder, welcome to this next lesson in our series where I am building a fully functional web app using React front end and a Spring Boot back end in a relational database, building that all from scratch. So in the last lesson or episode, if you will, we outlined sort of the relationship between our two main classes, the two main, what they're called domain objects, user and assignment. And we figured out that it would probably be a one-to-many relationship. So now I want to take our current design that we've penciled in, so to speak, and I want to implement it inside of our new Java project. So how do we do that? Well, there's a few ways to get going. One way is to go to start.spring.io and start your process there. So start.spring.io. And this allows you to go and create the Java side of things, because right now we're talking about the domain objects. These will exist in the world of Java and the database. So you could go here and choose your settings. For me, I'm going to choose Maven for the sort of the build part of things. You can choose Gradle. Those are the two most popular. I just use Maven myself. You can, of course, choose Kotlin or Groovy, but I just choose Java because that is sort of my language of choice, because there are lots and lots of jobs available in the Java language in today's marketplace. By the way, if you've been liking these videos, please do give a thumbs up. I always forget to ask for you to do that at the beginning, and also subscribe if you want to get notifications for more of these lessons in the future. So subscribe, like, all that stuff. You know what to do. All right. In terms of the project metadata, the group is usually the name or the URL backwards. So wherever you plan to deploy this project is what domain name you would use here. I don't even know where I would. Usually I just say Coders Campus, even though that's not necessarily where I'm actually going to deploy it, but that's just what I typically do. The name here is some unique name to identify this. We can call this the assignment, submission app. And description can really be anything. It doesn't matter at all. I'm just going to leave it blank for now. So let me see here. Package name, cool. Packaging, we'll probably package it. There are, many options, two options, not many. There's many choices that we can make, but I will package it as a WAR file. Just because for me and my DevOps knowledge, which is not too broad, I have a fairly limited DevOps set of expertise. This is just one I'm very familiar with. You package it as a WAR and you deploy the WAR into something like an AWS instance, EC2 instance, and it'll be able to unpackage and run in the web. So when I deploy this to run live on the internet, that's just part of the process of how I know how to do things. Should I use Java 17? I typically teach and use Java 11 because right now Java 8 is the most popular version in the marketplace. 11 is probably going to be the next most popular, so that's why I just typically focus on 11, because that's going to be the next most popular. If I teach you 17, you'll learn a bunch of stuff in 17 and then never be able to use it in the real world. So I stick with 11, and that's why I choose that. If you want to be in the cutting edge, then by all means build it with Java 17. Over here, I clicked on Add Dependencies. This is where you want to start to add in the pieces of your project that you know you need to use. You don't have to add them all in right now. If you miss any, you can always add it in later. There's a file where you can modify. But I should hopefully know what I'm doing here. The first one is MySQL. So I type in MySQL, and MySQL driver is the one I will choose. So that will allow me to hook my Java project up to a MySQL database. I will click Add Dependency again, and I'm going to add Spring Web, which is essentially Spring MVC. This allows us to tie our front end to, or our Spring, what's it called? The Java app to some sort of front end using RESTful web services, which React will have to connect to Spring in our Spring Boot app via REST connection. So we need Spring Web. What else do we need? Spring Data Jpa. So Spring Data Jpa is sort of what they call a layer of abstraction that helps with getting rid of a lot of the Hibernate boilerplate code. What that means is, in plain English, it allows you to write less code to be able to do all the CRUD, the 4 operations on the database. Creating, reading, updating, and deleting data. Normally you'd have to code in all of that, all those SQL statements and everything to be able to do creating, reading, updating, and deleting. Spring Data Jpa allows us to have a very quick way to get up and running with 1 line of code to get all 4 of those sort of things built in for every single domain object that we have. So for the users, we'll be able to create, in other words, insert users, update users, delete users, and read users out of the box. And we will also be able to do the same 4 things with the assignments as well, the assignment object. So, and any other object, right? That's what Spring Data Jpa is good at. Will we need anything else? I'm trying to think at the moment. We've got our Spring Web to talk to the front end. We've got Spring Data Jpa to talk to the back end, or to the database. We've got the database. Java is in the middle. I think for now that will suffice. Unless you want to do something, let me just have a look. Sometimes there's the option for, let me see. Oh, Spring Security. Yeah, I probably will want to use Spring Security. So this allows us to identify or use like a login mechanism and have a way to have authentication and authorization. So yeah, it allows us to have user accounts with usernames and passwords and everything. So Spring Security is definitely a must. What else? Well, what else can we shop for in our list of dependencies? We don't need OAuth. That's too big. Other databases, NoSQL databases. Do we need any messaging? I don't believe so. Will we have any batch jobs? No, not to this extent. We might need a Quartz scheduler, but that's sort of a nice to have feature that we talked about where we have scheduled jobs running potentially every day or every hour or whatever. Caching would be nice, but we don't have to dive into that yet. Okay, they've added a lot of stuff here. I haven't been here in a long time, so this is great stuff, man. Spring Cloud, if you want to leverage their cloud stuff instead of AWS. Cool. All right. Nice. I think that's good enough. So those are the 4 things. Now what do? We click on the big generate button. What this will do is it will create a zip file. So I will throw that, I don't know, sure, downloads. That will create a single zip file that we can then import into a new project. So the IDE I use on the Java side is Eclipse. I use Eclipse because Eclipse is free. A lot of people will lose their minds because someone is using Eclipse and they will have strong opinions about it. That's okay. All the things that you're saying about Eclipse are probably true. What I don't do is I don't use IntelliJ because eventually you'll have to pay for it. IntelliJ has a community edition, I realize is free, but once you get into enterprise development, which is what we are going to do, you're going to have to pay for it, and it is not inexpensive, and I don't want to force students to have to pay that huge fee when there is a very decent and sometimes even preferred free option. So that's my reasons, and I'm sticking to them. So I'm going to use Eclipse, and I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Import. And I believe, what do we do here? Is this an existing Maven project? From, how do we, general archive file? Maybe archive file? I haven't done this in a while. You're learning along with me. Hopefully my stumbling and bumbling will give you, what's it called? Confidence that if someone like myself with 15 years of experience will bumble through this and stumble, it means there's hope for you as well. So, cannot import to a workspace with no open projects. Please create a project before importing. Okay, do I want to do that? So this is a Maven project because it has a POM file, right? Okay, so I think in order to, since this is an existing Maven project, I can go to downloads. I can take this folder, assignment submission app. I'll just extract it into here, into the downloads folder. So it'll create an assignment submission app folder. There it is. From there, we can say file, import, and we can say existing Maven projects. Let's browse to that directory within downloads, assignment admission app. select folder, boom, there we go. So that's how we do it. We need to unzip it first, package it, and then it has that POM file. So we can say finish, and that will bring it in here. The only downside is this project is in my downloads folder, which is not a great place for a project to exist. I really should have moved it out of my downloads folder and put it in a better place. Why don't I delete this? Or rather, why don't I cut this out of here? I'm going to put it in my Git folder. Git is a better folder to put it in, your home directory /Git. I'm going to paste it in here. It might barf because it's currently being used. So hold on. Let me close the project, and hopefully that'll stop it from being used so that I can actually... Oh, it did move. Okay, so it moved over. Let me do that one more time. Import existing Maven project, browse the Git folder, and then find the assignment submission app and say select, and then say here, oh right, I need to, it's a closed project. I got a bunch of closed projects. I need to delete this assignment submission app because I brought it in, right? So it's here, and tried to bring it in again and said, oh, that folder already exists. Let me delete it. Well, it's probably not going to work because it doesn't exist. Okay, it just sort of got rid of it because anyway. I'll hide the folder again one more time. File, import, existing Maven project. Go to the Git folder, then import it from here, then say select, and then we're good to go and finish. So now I just sort of told Eclipse to forget about the one in the downloads folder. When I deleted it, it said forget about the one in the downloads folder, and then I said instead point to the one in the Git folder because that's just a better spot for our assignment. So as you can see here, boom, it has brought in a bunch of files, and this is the standard sort of layout for a Java application. We have the assignment submission app package with the two files that it automatically brings in. This application, oh, look at that, assignment submission app application. So that was a poor naming convention on my part. Let me Alt-Shift-R to rename it. I'm going to remove app and hit enter, and then say go. And then I will rename the tests. Sure. So there are also tests associated with it over here called assignment submission application tests. And it said, hey, if you're renaming this one, you should probably rename this one as well, which is what it did. So cool. Now, if we want to, we can run this. If I right-click on the main method, okay, the main method is where everything starts in a Java app. I can right-click and say run as a Spring Boot app, and it will try to boot it up. And it might even work. No, so it doesn't work because it says, hey, it can't start because there is no database associated with it. So because I put in that MySQL connector dependency, it's assuming that there's going to be a MySQL database here. So it's not able to get booted up because of that. So that is inside of the resources and application properties. So in here, there is some settings that you can throw in here that will allow your database to connect properly. And I forget if it's like data source. There's all these different, Spring data source URL equals, what else? Data source, name, type, username, password. I don't think you need it. Maybe a type. Anyway, what I'll do is I'll pause the video. I'll go copy paste it from somewhere else because this is literally what I do is copy paste it from my past apps. So I don't want to waste your time. So let me pause it. All right. So there you go, through the magic of pausing the video and copy pasting the settings from another project. Here we are. So I will explain them for you. So there are 3 Spring data source properties and there are 3 Spring JPA properties that matter. The first is the URL of how to connect to your database. When you're working on your local host, meaning your own machine, your own computer, you use this connection string, JDBC, MySQL, localhost 3306. This is typically the port. This is the default port that any MySQL database will be listening on. So I have, not as part of this series, already installed a MySQL server running on my own computer. So MySQL server is running as a process in the background, and it is always running on localhost 3306. And then this is the name of the database that I'm creating. You can pick any name you like. I feel like assignment submission DB is a pretty good name for the database, so I chose that. When I set up MySQL, the MySQL server that's running on my local machine, I set it up with this username and password. Your username and password will be different if you've set up MySQL on your computer. Now, for these properties, it needs to know what dialect to use. The dialect means there's different versions of MySQL. Okay, there's MySQL 1, MySQL 2, or whatever, MySQL 5, 5.5, 5.8, 8, 8.2, 8. Whatever. So there's a whole bunch of different versions, and that's what they mean by dialect. Which version am I working with here? When you're using MySQL 8, at least, you just say MySQL dialect. Okay, if you were using MySQL 5 or something, I think you'd say MySQL 5 dialect. But I'm using MySQL 8, so this is the dialect that I use. You don't need this property here. This is just to say, hey, I want you to show me the SQL statements when you run them via the JPA stuff. Like I said, the CRUD operations. I want to see them, so that's why I said true. You don't have to show them if you don't want to, but I find it to be helpful. And then this guy is a whole other can of worms. Basically, this is whether or not you want to give Hibernate the control over your tables in terms of creating the tables and updating the tables as you modify Java objects. Some people like that. Some people do not. If you like to be in control of your own database tables and stuff, and you want to write all your own create scripts and all your own SQL scripts and everything, you would say none. None means Hibernate. Don't try to do anything automatically. Don't try to do anything funny. I want to have all the control and all the say in how I manage all my database tables. If you don't want to have control over that and you want it to run all of the update or all of the create table statements and update tables and all that stuff, you can set it to be update. The other one is create or create drop. They're both the same thing, just different flavors of the same thing. Create will get rid of your entire database and create a brand new one whenever you boot up. So on boot, it will drop all the old tables, meaning blow away all your data, and then create a new one from scratch. This is great when you are first getting started. In other words, right now, it's great for getting up and running. If you're making a lot of really big changes to the database structure and stuff, it's great. Never ever use that setting in production. Okay, live on the internet, you would never use this because you would never want to actually drop every single database table and blow away your entire database and then start fresh. That's a huge no-no. So this is a bit dangerous, right? Never do that. Which is one of the reasons why people don't like to use any of the settings other than none. In other words, they say, Hibernate, do not touch my database tables. This is like the safest setting, right? I've always used update because I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to use update. Cool. So now if we boot up the app, does it boot up? I don't know. Let's find out. Yeah. Cool. Started. So there you go. The application started up. It won't do anything right now. If you try to visit it, if you try to go to like localhost 8080, okay, it'll do this. So it's got the built-in Spring security stuff. So Spring security generated password being this, and I don't know what their default username is, like admin or something maybe. No, bad credentials. I don't remember what the username is of their default user. Maybe it's like user. There you go. So I think that's what the combination is. User and then that password, and it gives you 404. So basically what you saw there was it's password protecting everything. And once I got past the password protected mechanism, in other words, I authenticated myself with a valid username and password, it let me through to the URL I was trying to visit, which is just the root URL, localhost 8080. As soon as it let me through to localhost 8080, there's nothing there. So I don't have any controllers. I don't have any code there to do anything. So it just says 404 page not found because, we don't have anything there. Anyway, we won't worry about that right now. We're just building out a backend with Java only. So the views are going to be the React portion of this. The backend is we're just kind of a REST interface, a RESTful API as part of our Java side of things. So Java is not going to deliver any views. Java is not going to say, hey, here's an HTML page, go and render it. Instead, Java is going to say, hey, here's the data. That's all Java is responsible for in the scope of this application. Okay, So cool. Now we've got to the point where we've got a very minimal project up and running. It's taken a while because I'm explaining everything. Obviously, this from in the real world, going from whatever 3 or 4 lessons ago to now would have only taken me maybe an hour total, right? So it's taken a lot longer because I have to explain it all, but it is actually quite quick. It used to take much longer to get to this point without Spring Boot, but now it's much, much shorter. So the next step is to take our model, user and assignment and all these properties and relationships, and take those and put it into Java code, right? We weren't able to do it in this video. I was hoping we could, but hey, that's all right. There were some steps that we needed to accomplish first before we got to that point, which is getting our app up and running and just a sort of a, the very beginning version of the app up and running. We've got that, great. So now we can go on to the next lesson, which will be actually creating our user and assignment classes and outlining all the properties and then making sure that they get created as database tables in our database. Okay. Ooh, one more thing I forgot to mention. If you were trying to follow along with me and you were not, it did not work, it's because I did something sneaky behind the scenes. I created the assignment submission DB. I created the database inside of a MySQL workbench. As I stated before, I've already installed MySQL on my computer. Along with MySQL comes with something called MySQL Workbench. MySQL Workbench is kind of like the IDE for the MySQL database. So I just ran this one piece of code to create database assignment submission URL. I basically logged into my existing app. I said new query tab, and then I said create database and assignment submission DB. So if I drop the database now, so let me go back to this and say drop database. This is the state that your app would have been in had you not created the database. And if you went to run it, you might have still received an error message saying database not found or something. Here, you probably saw this error, which is unknown database assignment submission DB. So if you were getting that error message, it means it doesn't know what that database is because you hadn't created it yet. That's the one thing we need to do is create that database. And then I run that statement. And then if I refresh over here, there it is. Assignment submission DB is here. Okay, there's nothing in it. There's no tables or anything. It's just there. Then when you boot up again, you won't get that unknown database error. It should boot up nicely. Okay, so there you go. That's where we will leave things off. In the next lesson, I will go ahead and show you exactly how to create those two domain objects and hopefully how to get the relationships up and running. If you don't want to miss it, please be sure to subscribe to the channel below, the big gold red button. I'm sure you are not a noob, you know exactly what I'm talking about and how to subscribe. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you're liking the series so far. And yeah, I promise we're going to get to some more exciting non-setup related stuff in the next lesson. So looking forward to seeing you there. Take care of yourself. As always, happy learning and bye for now.